I love a good, cheap VR game. So here's the best Steam VR games for $5 or less. We have a ton to get to. Let's get started with some action games. Codename Phantom is a gallery shooting challenge that requires quick thinking and reflexes.
All hostiles neutralized. Mission is a success.
The game consists of a series of mini missions. Eliminate all of the enemies, and if there's a hostage, make sure they stay alive.
They shot the hostage.
I think you'll get the best sense of the gameplay by watching one of the early missions in its entirety.
Eliminate the enemy threat agent. All enemies eliminated. Area secured. Great job, Agent.
The later levels do get very challenging, with many more enemies to keep track of, especially when trying to defend a hostage.
The enemy presence has not been dealt with.
You have an ability that lets you see through walls, so that way you can spot enemies or explosives that you can shoot. But know that you can't change your location. You're stuck in one place with the mission happening around you. After about 30 minutes of gameplay, I beat all of the levels in normal mode, which will then unlock hardcore mode. In hardcore mode, you lose your laser sight and it's a one-hit death for you. It's a nice quick reflex minigame challenge.
What was that?
All hostiles neutralized. Mission is a success.
Up next, QUAKE. You may have watched me play this recently in VR. The base game is $5 on Steam, and there's a free VR mod that you can download and install. I'll link to the instructions for that below. And this mod is excellent. It's a nearly perfect VR mod. Playing QUAKE with full VR support, including motion controllers, is a really fun experience. The mod also features plenty of options, so you can customize your experience how you like. If you've ever enjoyed QUAKE in the past, then you absolutely have to play this with the VR mod. A10 VR is a shooter where enemies appear from all around you, not just in front of you. There's 4 game modes to choose from. Practice mode and time mode you've played before in other games. Survival mode has robots and bombs drifting toward you. Try to take out all the bombs before they get to you to survive as long as you can. And attack mode feels much more like Space Pirate Trainer, where the bots are flying around and shooting you with lasers that you need to dodge. And the 360 attack range all around you really presents a unique challenge. It's tricky to keep up and figure out where everything is coming from. This game features my favorite gun reloading mechanic, which is flicking your wrist. I love it whenever shooter games feature this reloading system because I find it fast, easy, and engaging. Reloading this way doesn't slow me down. A10 is a sci-fi shooting gallery that's all around well made. A good shooter at $5. In Spacecats with Lasers VR, you control the power of a mighty space cat on your hand. And as you would expect, you need to destroy all of the space threats that come your way. This is one of the most creative and unique wave shooters I've ever seen. And even though it's a family-friendly game, the difficulty gets challenging really quickly, and I find the gameplay quite addicting. You only have one weapon and you hold down trigger the entire time. But that single weapon gets frequent upgrades and power-ups as you progress. There are temporary power-ups to shoot during play, and also permanent power-ups to choose in between waves. Pressing trigger on the opposite hand will switch your space cat to the other hand. That's really nice if your hands get tired, or if you want to change up strategies to avoid fire. It's a high-quality shooter for just $5, and it's a really fun, casual time. Thirst VR is your cheesy action movie explosion fantasy come true. In a Mad Max apocalyptic-like wasteland, you're riding forward in a train with all kinds of random vehicles trying to hurt you. From cars, to helicopters, to blimps. You have 3 weapons to choose from, and you can throw grenades with your left hand. You'll also find random power-ups you can shoot to give you temporary boosts or protection. For a simple action game, I find it really fun to just play for 5 or 10 minutes at a time. And it's priced just right at $3. Scrap Attack is a defense wave shooter with surprising quality and a spectacular price. Waves of endless robots are charging toward your precious crystal base, so teleport around the level and take them down. With the touchpad, you have a radial menu to choose one of 3 guns: a rapid-fire pistol, a sniper-like laser, and a spread shot. The enemy robots are full of personality and creatively designed. You'll also see quite a variety in robots, both on the ground and flying in the sky. There's 3 levels to choose from, each for a different difficulty level. The sound design is good, and the soundtrack is fun to listen to. So it's not a deep game. We've all seen a million wave shooters come out for VR. But I found this one to be surprisingly polished. And best of all, the regular price is just $1. Princess Kidnapper 2 is an archery defense wave shooter. You know the drill. Stop the waves of enemies from breaking through the gate. Just like the archery game in the lab. It has some interesting mechanics, like hitting targets to receive arrow power-ups, and there's some unique enemies I didn't expect, like a wizard in the background that keeps resurrecting skeletons, or enemies that get more powerful every few seconds, so you need to kill them as soon as you can. There's a million archery games out there, but this one is surprisingly good for the price, and family-friendly. And now, some adventure games.
Watch out, rookie.
Dimensional is a narrative adventure that has you saving an alien race. And that journey will take you through many obstacle course challenges and puzzles that will really challenge your brain. It's important to know that this is a very physical experience. You'll need to physically avoid spikes, crouch, and even jump to avoid danger. And for an early VR title, it uses some of the mechanics in creative ways, like using the microphone in your headset to distract robots to draw their fire so you can pass them by. Yeah. There's both teleporting and sliding movement, but you will need some room scale to complete some of the challenges. On your journey, you're accompanied by Digby, a floating bot with a funny personality that you'll need to control to solve many of the puzzles.
This is my favorite painting. Do you like it?
You can place Digby wherever you want, and then tell him where to fly and with how much speed. That way he can activate buttons, push objects, stuff like that. The entirety of this platforming puzzle adventure will take you about 4 hours to beat, so for the price of $5, it's an incredible value. Don't let the unconventional graphics fool you. This game is amazing fun, and I highly recommend it.
We need to get that back, rookie.
And speaking of adventures with miniature floating companions, Kindled Cavern is a dreamlike journey where you're accompanied by a small ghost. The goal of the game is to ignite all of the torches, and so your small ghost friend will be indispensable to solve some of the puzzles. And thankfully, your small ghost doesn't mind being set on fire. After all, what are friends for? There's only teleporting movement, but you can choose between sliding teleportation or blinking teleportation. Everything is very zen and meditative here. It's a beautiful, minimally designed world with a zen soundtrack. There will be the occasional evil ghost that you need to extinguish with fire, but by and large, I found this game pretty relaxing. You can beat it in about an hour, and it's $5.
There appears to be a suitable replacement.
In Astral Domine, your spaceship has crash-landed on a seemingly desolate planet. But fortunately, your computer informs you there's an energy source that can be retrieved in a giant tower. So you need to find that energy source to get off the planet. It's a surprisingly large open world with lots to see. The gameplay is slow-paced most of the time as you're exploring the planet. But if you're patient, this game will surprise you. You'll get bits of backstory lore on the planet, and you'll need to solve some puzzles to progress along to find the energy source. This game will take you about 2 hours to beat. For how big and open the game felt for the price of $3, I was impressed. But there are some downsides. It's an early VR title, so there's only sliding locomotion. There's no teleport options or comfort options at all. Also know that if you press the menu button during gameplay, it takes you right back to the chapter selection screen with no way to resume your game. So if you do press the menu button, you have to go back to a chapter or skip to the next chapter. And finally, for my fellow arachnophobes, there are giant spiders in there. But having said all that, for a sci-fi exploration game, you get a lot of bang for your buck. Downward Spiral Prologue is a mysterious zero-gravity adventure. You find yourself inside an abandoned space station, and all of the crew has mysteriously vanished, so you need to explore to figure out what's going on. And the movement is truly zero-G. At first, the only way you can move is by grabbing on surfaces and pushing yourself along. But eventually you do get a propulsion system which really helps speed things along. The atmosphere is mysterious, isolating, and spooky, but I didn't find it scary at all. You'll have to engage in shooting combat as there's rebellious droids trying to kill you. This game is a teaser for what eventually became a full game called the Downward Spiral Horus Station. I'll link to my review of the full game below, but personally I felt the full game was tedious and a little boring, and this short teaser I found more enjoyable and just right for the price. You can beat it in about 20 minutes and it's just $2. I should mention that you can play this in solo play, co-op, or deathmatch, so you can team up with your friends or just float and shoot your friends. It's a fantastic value.
Maybe there was hope after all.
A Writer and His Daughter is a narrative puzzle adventure. You play as the aforementioned daughter. Because of that, you're about 4 feet tall, exploring your home, and also discovering portals to imaginary realms within your home. And the only mode of movement throughout the game is teleporting. The voice acting isn't spectacular, but I've certainly heard worse.
But when the stars started to fall, the world was swallowed by darkness.
But on the other hand, the visual design and the music is very well done. The story features themes of darkness and evil, but I didn't find it scary, just kind of moody. And I didn't run into any jump scares at all. The puzzles themselves are kind of childlike in a good way. They feature things like item hunting to unlock new items, drawing with connect the dots, sequence storytelling, things like that. But I wouldn't necessarily call this family friendly because it's a very moody atmosphere, and there's other things that show up in the storyline like family abuse. So even though the gameplay and setting is childlike in nature, I would not necessarily call this a family friendly game. But ironically, with all of the simple puzzles, I actually got stuck after an hour of playing. And after that hour, the game says I'm 60% complete through the game. So given the game length and the overall quality, I think it's a spectacular value at $2.
Turn back and stay in my kingdom. Behind me, there is only evil.
Mystic VR is a puzzle-searching game which requires lots of exploration and patience. You wander via teleportation, a peaceful and mostly quiet environment. When you come up against your first barrier, you need to input a specific color sequence to proceed, but you don't have the answer at the barrier, you need to search for the answer. Find the right clues, then come back to open the barrier. Proceeding farther will reveal the next code or the next barrier, and so on it goes. It's a pretty environment and very colorful. It certainly isn't a deep game, but for some casual wandering, it's good for $1. Moving on to some strategy games. VectorWave is a tower defense game in a Tron-like visual style. If you've ever played tower defense games before, then the gameplay here is just as you would expect. But they made some nice, unique choices when making this for VR. For example, on your left hand is a rotating menu that shows you all of the towers you can build. Using your other hand, you grab from the menu the tower you want to build, and then you drop it onto the playing field for it to get built. Besides the towers themselves, you can also place buffers for the towers, which add more speed to their attacks or more power. The maps are rather large, so you need to move yourself by pressing the thumbpad and then dragging your hand like you're dragging yourself along the level. It's like a push and pull movement mechanic. You also have some weapons that you can fire yourself. You can grab a bomb from the menu and toss it onto the ground. Or you can also fire a laser directly from your left hand. Both of those weapon modes will cost you resources, so you need to be frugal with those. I really like the visual style they've designed here. It feels just right for a tower defense game, in my opinion. There are so many tower defense games available in VR right now. I think this one delivers the best bang for your buck. And if VectorWave was too much for your budget, then the runner-up would be Miniature TD. It's not nearly as fully featured, there's only 2 levels to choose from, but it's just $1, and it features a really fun 8-bit retro 3D visual style. And just like with VectorWave, there are 2 separate weapons you can grab and manually shoot yourself, which is always fun. For a tiny, simple, and cute tower defense game, this is the runner-up choice. If Pac-Man and Bomberman had a baby, it would be Ghost Pursuit. The goal is to traverse a maze-like level and kill all of the ghosts you find. You can kill them with a proximity bomb, a fireball, or when you're invincible. Don't let the simple graphics fool you. If you enjoy Pac-Man or Bomberman, I think you'll really enjoy this. I found it especially fun to trick ghosts into walking into your proximity bombs. You can play in first-person mode or God mode. Playing in first-person mode has you on the ground level facing the ghosts at eye level. While playing this mode, you can get an elevated perspective to see what's around the corner, but you can't play that way, you have to play on the ground. Playing in God mode is like a typical Pac-Man or Bomberman game, where you are actually above the map controlling the miniature character. Ghost Pursuit comes with a bunch of maps, but also includes an in-VR level creator and editor. The default mode of movement is sliding movement, but it also features a quasi-teleportation mode where, while you're moving, you get to see a preview of your wheels to see where you will end up, and then when you release the button, you teleport to where your wheels are. For the price of $2, you get a lot of bang for your buck with this game. In the game Scutter, you control a robot that can roll, fly, and shoot lasers. In each level, the goal is to collect all the blue crystals, after which the exit will open up and you beat the level. Often you'll need to fire lasers at the red orbs, since just one touch from them will kill the robot. After you beat a couple of levels, you'll have enough money to buy special powers, like invincibility or longer flying time. These powers are one-offs, but you can buy many of them to stock up. In each map, you can freely teleport yourself around for better vantage points, which is great. The best part of this game is the cheap price. It's just $2, and I was surprised by how good the gameplay feels for the price. The downside is that there's only 15 levels. You can easily beat it in under an hour. But even with that one downside, it's a good budget title. Try this for something a little different. Mortars VR takes the classic artillery game genre and puts it in VR. And the VR implementation is done really well. Everything is tactile and utilizes motion controllers perfectly. You can push up or pull down your periscope view. The loading and firing of your weapon is done with levers and pulleys. You aim your cannon with rotating wheel controls. It's all very well designed for motion controllers. It also features some different classes to choose from that come with different weapon power-ups and perks unique to the class you choose. You can play single player with bots or multiplayer. They've recently added the option to fill in your multiplayer games with bots. So if there's just 2 people playing, you can make it a full game by adding the bots. It's a fantastic artillery game at the amazing price of $1. And now, a few Sandbox Games. Chroma Lab is an interactive fluid particle simulation. It gives you some pretty cool tools to interact with and play with the particles. The particles also react to music. This game doesn't include any music, but the particles will react to any audio that's playing on your PC. Playing your own music is a very small price to pay to enjoy this. It's totally worth it. Watching video footage of this does not do it justice. Witnessing this in VR is magical and spellbinding. In each hand you can choose a specific tool, and also the strength of that tool. So you can find fun results by playing with contrasting tools at the same time. My personal favorite is the sphere tool, which will capture and grab particles inside the sphere, but outside the sphere it punches and pushes them away. But there's also advanced settings and tools which will allow you to create planetary orbits and gravitational forces. Chroma Lab is one of my favorite casual time killers. Every time I play in here, it fills me with wonder again. And the $5 price tag is a bargain. VR Sand is a sandbox game, like quite literally, because you're playing with sand inside a box. The controls are straightforward. With your primary hand, you press trigger to create an element of your choosing. The thumb pad will erase. On your secondary hand, press the thumb pad for the palette of different materials and brush size. You can choose which hand you would like to be the dominant hand, and with both hands, use grip to move the box. There's a variety of both solids and liquids to choose from, and painting with all these is pretty cool and satisfying to see how different elements respond and react to each other. There's no goals or anything, just have a good time. It would be super cool if there were sound effects when elements collide and interact, like the sound of running water or splashing. VR Sand is $5, and it's the most literal sandbox game out there. Tiny Wheels is a sandbox game where you can steer a tiny car through courses and obstacles that you've constructed. There's about 10 items that you can summon to arrange however you like. You can't change their color or material, what you see is what you get. The play area is a fixed size, but you can scale the world up or down at your disposal. You can also scale the items if you click and hold on an item while you're scaling. Press the play button to control the car inside the course you've made. Drive your car around, or return to editing as much as you want. That's really all there is to it. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I think there's lots of fun to be had in here if you enjoy sandbox games and don't need goals or achievements. For the price of $2, it's a fun, casual budget game. Yeah! And of course, some escape room games. Dungeon Escape VR is a single dungeon room with clean graphics and exceptional puzzles. There's a variety of things to complete, like logic puzzles and skill-based challenges. For each successful challenge, you get a mysterious cube. After collecting all the cubes, you escape the room. This game is nicely polished all around, but one surprising thing is that you can open all the books, which is rare in my experience. Once you finish the basic room, you can play the hard room. I beat both rooms in about an hour. Also note that teleporting is your only mode of movement in this game. Inescapable VR Underground begins like many other escape rooms. You find yourself in a dark place and you need to turn the lights on. You'll see some sloppy red paint, or blood, declaring that you have 1 hour to escape. Like the previous game, you can open all the books, which you'll need to do to solve some of the puzzles. This one took me a few tries to finish, and I think it's a great value for the price of $5. This game features both teleporting and sliding movement. Internal Light VR is a prison escape game with a tiny bit of fantasy flair. Progress through a linear arrangement of room puzzles. Your path is guided by a fairy-like ball of light which shows you the way, and sometimes gives you clues for what you need to accomplish. There's only one mode of movement, and that's arm-swinging locomotion, or more accurately, arm-pulling locomotion. But the movement system works in tandem with some of the puzzles, like this one where you have to continue walking on beams to avoid any gap in the path. Since you can't jump or teleport, it works well with this particular challenge. There's a lot of variety in the gameplay, like a laser net dodging sequence that requires lots of movement from you, or a railway cart sequence that feels like a roller coaster. It's all over in about 30 minutes. It's a nice, solid escape game. VR Vacate the Room is the first escape room game I ever played, and it still holds up to this day. You find yourself locked in a tiny room, as you would expect. It starts out dark with a flashlight, but soon enough you'll find a way to turn the lights on. After you beat it once, which will take about 30 minutes, you'll have an option to play it again with more difficulty by pressing the question mark. And I found the hard room very difficult. So it's like you get 2 escape rooms in one. You'll need a room scale of 2 meters by 1.5 meters to play this.
There's got to be so warm in there. There's got to be.
In Storm VR, you're technically not escaping from a room, but it feels quite similar in gameplay. So it's almost like an escape room in a larger scale. You need to survive in the freezing cold. So obviously the goal is to find shelter and get warm, but as you probably suspect, it's a lot easier said than done, and you'll have some puzzles to solve before you can get to safety.
I need electricity. This is pointless.
On your left wrist is a timer, so you know how much time you have left to live. Which is bittersweet news, I suppose. I was really challenged by this game. It took me about 40 minutes to beat it, and I had a lot of fun. For the $2 price tag, it's a steal. Also note that the only mode of movement is teleportation. And now the biggest category in this video, puzzle games. Gnomelings Migration is a Lemmings clone, but even though it's a straight up VR clone of Lemmings, it's a very good clone. If you've ever played Lemmings before, you'll instantly know how to play this. One interesting new feature in this game is that once you've assigned an ability to one of the Gnomelings, you can reposition them or re-aim them after you applied the ability. That doesn't apply to all abilities, but it's a nice little feature. It comes with lots of levels, and even an inside VR level creator and editor, which is pretty awesome. Now for the ultimate Lemmings game, I recommend 10 Hearts, but for a $5 Lemmings game, this is really good. Alice Mystery Garden is a charming and family-friendly puzzle game. Miniature Alice is wandering around in Wonderland and you need to help her get through platforming puzzles. You've certainly played games like this before. You move Alice with the left thumb pad, and you, the giant person, can grab yellow objects and move them, like cubes or sliding platforms. Alice needs to collect all 5 mirror shards before escaping through the magic mirror. If you press the right thumb pad, you become Alice and get a first-person perspective. That's necessary sometimes to find the shards. Unfortunately, you move really slow in this mode. There's 3 sections with 5 levels in each, and a final level. To clear each section, you need to beat 3 out of 5 levels, which is nice if a particular level is halting your progress. For just $5, it's a great value. Light Repair Team Number 4 is a laser light reflection puzzle game where you play as a light pipe repair person trying to restore power to a city. Light beams of various colors need to be routed, bounced, and combined so they arrive at their corresponding goals and matching the proper color. It requires a room scale of 2 meters by 2 meters, especially since there's no locomotion options at all. You'll need all that space to walk around the platform and reach everything. This game has some of my favorite ambient music and atmosphere. Something about the sound design and environments always absorb me and put me in a good mood. I was able to beat it in 2 hours, and they recently lowered the price to $5. It's a fantastic deal. Waddle Home is a delightful little puzzle game that's full of charm. Evil robots have imprisoned your space penguins, so you need to get your space penguins to their UFO for safe travels. Everything is executed in this game via bopping. You bop the prison to release the penguins, you bop the penguins themselves to make them go faster, and you bop obstacles to make them go up or down into the ground. When penguins hit a wall, they always turn right. When robots hit a wall, they always turn left, and if a robot happens to reach a penguin, they're sent back to prison. To beat each level, get all of your penguins into the UFO, but you get bonus points by collecting special eggs throughout the level for an extra challenge. Everything in this game is highly polished. It's full of charm and personality, with fun, brightly colored visuals and great sound design as well. It's a fantastic puzzle game the whole family can enjoy. And best of all, it's just $5. Boxed In is a simple puzzle game, the likes of which you've probably played in other puzzle games. It's a color matching game where you need to eliminate a growing pile of blocks. Similar colors in certain patterns eliminate the blocks. The goal is to remove all of the blocks, if you can. Even though you've almost certainly played a game like this before, the VR implementation of this is done really well. There are quite a few gameplay options for this. For example, there's Survival Mode, which has the cubes being slowly pushed along the playspace, and you need to eliminate them all before they can reach the end. There's also Solitaire Mode, which is more relaxing and zen, and you can play at your own pace. There's also the Match Mode setting. Do you want to eliminate cubes in a row of 3 or a cube of 4? You can also choose to have more than just 3 colors if you want, but that will obviously increase the difficulty. You move around via teleportation, and if you find a cube gets isolated, you can use the grip button to create more cubes so you can actually execute a sequence. Boxed In is a simple but good color matching game that plays great in VR. Slam is a puzzle game in which you control one thing, gravity. Get your square into the goal by shifting gravity in different directions. So as you can probably tell, this game is all about managing a sequence of collisions. And of course the mechanics get more challenging as you go by introducing new things like barriers, magnets, and so on. By default, the playing board is at your feet, but I think that's too low to the ground. But thankfully, in the settings you can change the height of the playing board to be how you want it. It's a very good looking puzzle game that's overall well polished and has good sound design as well. Also, VR is not required. You can play this in regular flat screen if you like. There's a total of 50 puzzle levels, so I find it a good value at $4. Elena is a narrative mystery puzzle game. You return home one day only to discover that your husband has mysteriously vanished under supernatural circumstances.
Yeah, we didn't get as much done as we...
After that, a mysterious and perhaps untrustworthy voice on the phone claims to help you.
Hello?
Hello, Anna.
Who is it?
I'm a friend, Anna, and I want to help you.
So you need to explore your home to find clues to figure out what happened to your husband. As you find important clues, you'll be given notes of paper with those clues on them. Put those on the corkboard near your front door, and you can connect the dots between the notes to decipher the mystery. The voice acting is very well done, and there's a story behind almost everything you find inside the house.
Leonard shot it for me when we went to an amusement park once. He's so wonderful and fluffy.
It's an older VR title. It's one of the first games I bought for myself, so I have a real soft spot for it. But it does show its age a little bit, especially in the graphics settings. You need to play with the graphics set to Ultra. Anything lower than that is pretty abysmal. Also, the game only features teleporting movement. That's your only option. But even with all that, I find it to be a real hidden gem of a mystery narrative puzzle game. It took me about an hour and a half to beat it, so for the price of $4, it's a great value.
The picture is called The Kiss. How amazing. Two entwined lovers. It's not clear where one starts and the other ends.
Untitled is an abstract puzzle game. Part of the fun is that the game gives no instructions whatsoever. It's simply through trial and error that you discover how these puzzles work. The goal of each level is to get the matching colored cube into the discs. But there are many different physics rules here that you wouldn't expect. The green cubes behave with normal gravity. Purple cubes have no gravity at all. Red cubes have reverse gravity. And the orange cubes you can't pick up. They need collisions to move. There are many more variables at play as well. The red gates only allow slow-moving cubes through, while the green gates only allow fast-moving cubes. Add to that doorway switches, special walls and tubes, and much more changes to the puzzles later. And there's even more advanced cubes in the later levels. It also features a soothing ambient soundtrack that helps you get lost in the gameplay. You'll get at least an hour of gameplay out of it. It's a fantastic value at $3. If you're a puzzle fan, it's a must-buy. Fightttris is a Tetris game that you can play 1 versus 1 against an opponent, or just solo by yourself. In the past, I've been mostly disappointed by VR Tetris games because they're either overpriced or they were always glitchy and full of bugs. Fightttris is neither of those. It's just $2 and it plays really well. The main gimmick here is that you use the trigger button to grab and manually move and turn the pieces to lock them into place. It feels like a very natural way to play Tetris with motion controllers. You can adjust the height of the playing field, which is essential both at the beginning and near the end of the game if it gets stacked up high. The options are pretty bare bones. You can choose to have either music on or off, or effects on and off, and then you can choose single player or multiplayer. When I played, I couldn't find anyone else to play with online, but looking at the trailer footage on the Steam page, the 1 versus 1 multiplayer looks pretty fun. And since the game is just $2, it's pretty reasonable for you and a friend to both buy the game together. For a simple VR Tetris game at the low price of $2, I find it pretty good, especially compared to most of the other ones out there. Jigsaw 360 is a casual and relaxing jigsaw puzzle game. The default mode is a spherical puzzle, but you can choose a flat version instead if you prefer. You also choose how many pieces the puzzle should be, from an 8-piece puzzle to 128 pieces. It's all pretty straightforward. In front of you, you'll find the tray that holds all the pieces. Highlight up to 2 pieces to bring them toward you. You can try to join them together first, or go straight to the puzzle canvas to find where they go. This whole game has a zen and relaxing mood to it. There's peaceful music playing, and you can choose background sound effects like nature, rain, or ocean waves. The game comes with 10 images available as puzzles, but you can import any image to use as a puzzle as well, as long as it's equirectangular. The game is also priced perfectly at $2. It's a nice little relaxing puzzle game. Crashimals is a unique blend of Angry Birds and airstrikes. Destroy the cakes either directly or by taking down structures. After destroying all the cakes, you move on to the next level. You guide the airplanes with a unique control scheme I've never seen before. Using your 2 hands as 2 ends of an imaginary arrow, you direct the flight path of the planes. At first glance it may seem awkward, but it feels surprisingly natural. As you progress, you'll unlock new planes that will have new abilities that you'll need for the later levels. Games like Angry Birds aren't usually my thing, but I really enjoyed playing this, and the lighthearted, cartoony design of this world is a fun world to play in. After a little more than an hour, I made it to the final world. But I wasn't able to beat the final world. I found it too difficult, for me anyway. If you like Angry Birds games, then I recommend it. And the $1 price tag is a spectacular price. Moving on to some obstacle course games. Unseen Diplomacy is a spy game obstacle course that uses your room scale really well. The goal of the game is to execute some spy hacking into a system, but to do that you have to walk and crawl in your room scale to avoid lasers and hit switches and find keys to doors. It's like an ever-evolving obstacle course that repeatedly reuses your room scale as you walk back and forth inside it. It's such a cool experience, but there's one major downside, and that's that it requires a room scale of 4 meters by 3 meters. With my setup, I was just barely able to get by constantly hugging the walls and being careful where I was walking. Playing this game almost makes me want to buy a house so I can get a much larger room scale. So while it's really fun, it requires a massive play space. If you're lucky enough to have a big enough play space, then it's a must play. Relativity is a puzzle platformer that will turn your world upside down. Gravity is relative here, as you'll be traveling all over the place, walking on walls and ceilings. It's a series of puzzle challenge levels. There's some physical challenges like dodging lasers, and when you first begin to shift gravity by moving along these curved surfaces, it is a little disorienting, but you do get used to it. And yes, there's both sliding movement and teleporting movement. At first the puzzling is pretty simple, like turning a wheel to lower a bridge to access a new area, but new mechanics and new challenges keep showing up and changing up the gameplay. There's both easy difficulty and hard difficulty. On easy difficulty, the enemies are less aggressive. More specifically, here you can see these bug-like creatures crawling on the ground. On hard difficulty, they would be jumping on your face, which I hate. So personally, I choose easy difficulty. If you don't mind things jumping on your face, you can choose hard difficulty. I estimate 2 to 3 hours to beat all the levels, so for the price of $2, it's a fantastic value. If you enjoy unique puzzle games, it's a must-play and a real hidden gem. Find China is an obstacle course challenge. Grab your massive backpack and attempt to walk to the cash register without breaking much merchandise. It features a very creative movement style called walkabout locomotion. You walk inside your room, and when you've reached a wall, you hold the grip button to freeze the world and turn around to face the other way. After turning, you walk forward until you reach the other side of your room scale, rinse and repeat. After a while, it feels surprisingly natural, and your brain almost believes that you're continually walking forward in the game world. It's helpful to intentionally turn opposite directions every time you turn around to help minimize your cord getting twisted up. This walkabout locomotion system feels strangely immersive once you get used to it. It's an all-around unique experience that I recommend you try. Tornuffalo is a room-scale debris-avoiding challenge. The Tornuffalo is sending danger flying your way, and you need to dodge everything because one hit and it's game over. You're granted a hammer that you can use to deflect objects out of your way, which is nice. There's also a variety of bonus modes that change up the gameplay with different rules or mechanics. Tornuffalo is a nice casual challenge. And finally, some games that I had difficulty categorizing, miscellaneous games. Starbear Taxi is a delivery game in which you need to deliver passengers and cargo to various destinations in a cute and charming world. You control your taxi by tilting your motion controller and propelling in that direction. It's pretty intuitive, you'll be up and running in no time. The entire game is beautifully designed and animated. There's charm everywhere you look, with so many things to appreciate and see. It's a great example of high attention to detail by the developers. This game is obviously family-friendly, but I found the later levels to be really challenging. There's something for everyone here. It's priced perfectly, and it's an amazing casual game. Intercosmos is part narrative comedy and part space simulator. You find yourself caught in the middle of some Cold War shenanigans while you try to guide your capsule to a safe landing.
Please change your coordinates to... Pilot, oxygen is critical. Refill oxygen now. Moscow, what the hell just happened?
Everything in this game is very well made. The visuals are great, the interactions are top-notch, and the voice acting is very good as well. While listening to instructions, things get pretty hectic and there's a lot of multitasking that has to happen.
Your fuse seems down. Find it and fix it. A good fuse should have a red light. Push the button on broken fuse to reset it.
So if you enjoy complicated chaos, then this will be right up your alley. You can beat it in about 30 minutes, but that's of course if you follow the instructions correctly and don't die. But there is some replayability if you want to discover all the different ways that you can die. For $5, it's an incredibly polished space experience.
Okay, the battery seems to work. That's good. Power all necessary subsystems.
Firebird the Unfinished is a VR short film with a little bit of interactivity. I don't want to give away the story here, so I'm going to speak in vague generalizations, and I hope it's still helpful. This is a very well-made short film. Great visual design, beautiful music, and talented voice acting. I expected the interactivity to be inconsequential, to not really matter or leave a mark on the story, but I was pleasantly surprised with how you actually do leave your mark on the film. This experience was designed very creatively.
There was one apprentice that year, a young woman. Her style was all edges and corners. She worked crudely, sculpting clay with her hands instead of marble with fine tools.
That's about all I can say without spoiling it. The runtime is a little over 20 minutes, and of course compared to modern films, VR films are a little more expensive. But as far as paid VR films go, this is one of the very best.
Our curse. If only we had finished it together as we promised.
Mad Factory is a simple and frantic game to assemble cookies before the clock runs out. You have 5 minutes, and you need to successfully follow the cookie instructions as much as you can to attempt a high score. On your far left is the conveyor belt, which brings the raw dough with the order screen above. In the middle, you pull levers to stamp the specific shape. On your right is the frosting machine with color dials, and on your far right you place the completed cookies. It's a simple game, but there's just enough multitasking to keep it engaging, especially since the conveyor belt doesn't stop bringing dough, so while I was trying to do other things, I kept trying to stop the extra dough from hitting the floor to prevent penalties to my score.
Excellent work. Perfect. Now here comes your next order.
This game is absolutely perfect for parties with your friends and VR arcades, because it's so easy to instantly play and get going. It's also priced just right at $4, and the arcade license is the same price as well. For simple casual play, or a gathering with friends, I recommend it.
Oh, hello, dear. I didn't even see you come in. Please do make yourself at home.
Kismet is a fortune-telling game. When you first start the game, you're immediately introduced to your mystical guide. She presents you with 3 options.
Important question. So, shall we ask the cards? Or the stars? Or perhaps you might be interested in a little game of wit.
The presentation and polish are top-notch. Beautiful visuals and animation with high attention to detail. If you enjoy demoing short VR experiences to newcomers, this is a fine choice.
Hold on tight. Please enter your birth date on the calendar there before you, and we'll get started right away.
So if you enjoy getting your fortune told and routinely look into these kinds of things for your life, then it's a great value. But if you're looking for a challenging game, then you won't find that here. It's cool that they included a simple dice game, but that's obviously not the main event here.
The rules are simple. Roll the dice, and move your pieces accordingly.
If you're into fortune telling or astrology, then I would recommend this.
You must follow your heart at this moment and ignore all those who are trying to convince you of their truth. Only you know the real and final truth.
If you're ever in the mood for aimless wandering, then Endless Labyrinth is for you. Make your way through a never-ending procedurally generated labyrinth collecting gems. That's all there is to it. But I've enjoyed many an evening wandering in here before going to bed. Something about this place feels just right for tuning out and engaging in a stress-free activity. For movement options, there's teleporting, sliding, and walkabout locomotion, just like Fine China has.
There's another.
Rescuties VR has you catching babies, kittens, and puppies to save them from disasters and throw them into bins. It's a fundamentally simple game, but there's tons of achievements and things to unlock. You may enjoy this in single player, but I think this really shines in a VR party.
Here comes a pair. Devil baby unlocked.
The game Rooma has you in the middle of a cylindrical room. There are colored floating orbs all around you and a bot orbiting the room. As you might expect, it's up to you to give the proper colored orb to the robot. Your thumbpad will attract or repel the orbs, and if you combine orbs together before giving them to the bot, you'll get a better score. When I first started this, I thought it would be boring, but playing on normal or hard difficulty really engaged me with addicting gameplay. In those modes, there are random energy fences and lasers to block your attracting and throwing abilities. And after playing even more, I discovered more strategies like throwing orbs to combine them instead of by hand, and attempting trick bouncing shots. This game was a pleasant surprise. Well, that's it for now. Thanks so much for watching. If you like what you see, please subscribe. See ya!